Good evening, guys. Welcome back to my channel. It's Coach DC from All 22 Films. We've got a unique presentation or piece of content here. A little bit of a role reversal between me and you, Will, right? Usually you're the one asking the questions. We're going to switch that up this time. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. And yeah, spot on. It's usually the other way around.
Will runs, for those of you that are Lions fans tuning in, you obviously know, but, my YouTube channel has I forget what word you used, Will, to describe it, but it's a collection or convergence of three different fan bases. So Will runs Detroit Football Journal, which is on Substack, right?
It is, yes.
And then Rocked On Lions, a YouTube channel, and also Rocked On Cancer Foundation, which I'll do this right in the beginning. That I'd like to give you an opportunity to plug that and describe that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So Rocked On Cancer Foundation, obviously it's super near and dear to my heart. In my home here, my lady was struck with cancer in 2022, breast cancer. And 9 months later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And during our trials and tribulations of trying to figure it all out, we realized that even though there's all these different, venues for cancer research and help or guidance, they're still falling short. And I just wanted to help any which way I could with awareness for thyroid cancer, which is what I had. And honestly, podcasting is how I was able to relearn how to talk again, because if you're not familiar with it, your laryngeal nerve can get cut, and mine was damaged. So that's how podcasting started for me. But Rocked On Cancer Foundation is, it's been a long process, and we're starting to grow in the right direction. But it's a way for me to help and give back and get the awareness out there of what it is and why it's not being detected nearly enough. And we simply just want to help people. The burden of cancer is tremendous financially, and having two people going through it at the same time, we realized that, there was just no resources available, that not that we really needed them, but even just guidance was difficult to find. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, awesome. First of all, number one. Number two, I'm glad that you're doing well, and I'm glad you recovered from the illness that you had at the combine too. I mean, I remember texting you back and forth some, and you'd respond late, and it would be like, "Hey, brother, I'm sick. I'm gonna have to get back to you in a couple of days." So
Yeah.
Jake's gonna join me here for this one, and Jake and I and multiple other people have created a website that we asked you to assist with and provide evals. What was your response, Will, the first time I reached out to you about that, the evals for the NFL draft, which is what this piece of content is about? What was your first response, and did I explain it well enough for you? Because you certainly jumped on board pretty quickly, which was awesome.
Yeah, well, one, I was surprised, because quite literally about the week or two before that, I was having a conversation with people in my chat in one of my morning shows, and I said I wanted to put together a digital magazine, and I was really trying to get things done this year, and realized how much of an undertaking it was. And it was maybe a week or two after that you had reached out. So I was just elated, number one, humbled that I was going to be included, because this is the first year with me really writing and putting my thoughts out there, for people to see anytime. It's different when you talk about it, it kind of disappears. But when it's in writing, your thoughts, your processes, your evaluations, everything that you think about a player or a situation are there to live forever. And so again, I can't thank you enough. And yes, of course, you explained it great. And that's why I jumped in, because being able to provide a collaboration, one, it's really tough to do in this industry. And I think that you have a lot of really good people put together to bring forth a lot of good energy and information for fans to really drill down who these players are. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
No, it goes the other way. Jake and I just recorded with a Ravens content creator, and feel the same way. Likewise, Jake, what was it? Was it 5 weeks ago? I don't even know. It feels like 2 weeks ago, but it feels like 3 months ago at the same when we began this process. And I'll explain, or you can explain if you want, who really is driving the engine of this website, because it's not me.
Yeah. You can touch on it a little more in the detail, but Jen has been so awesome creating this website for us. And like you said, I think it was like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we basically just had a blank Excel spreadsheet that had, columns and stuff, but it is so detailed, and it's amazing what Jin's built here, where we're able to just quite literally plug in data or an evaluation or whatever it may be, and it'll automatically pop up on the website, which is, it looks so cool, and I'm excited to see what everybody has to say about it.
Yeah, she dummy proofed it is number one for us. Number two, the analogy that I made with Jason is that she's driving the train, and it was just my job to, stand outside in the 10 minutes before the train took off and holler all aboard and get as many qualified and talented people on the train as possible, moving them in the right direction. And we've been very fortunate that, now just during the course of us beginning this conversation, Chris got in touch with me and provided the O-line evals that he wanted to give. And so we have been very fortunate to get so much collaboration and interaction from so many different sources. Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks content creators alike. Even had one Bengals guy say that he would participate, and haven't heard from him yet, but I expect him to. So what is normally your favorite part of the draft process? I know you said that you've been to the combine before. What is normally your favorite part of it, independent of this year? Because I know you went there this year for the first time as a reporter, right?
Yeah. So this is going to hit Lions fans probably right in the chest, but the draft is our Super Bowl, and it's been our Super Bowl for a very long time. So, being a loyal Lions member for 28 years with season tickets, following the team since I was 4 years old, standing on the field with Gary Danielson at Pontiac Silverdome, we always look forward to the draft. So that's first and foremost. That's just what we always look forward to. It's just been a big part of what I do as a fan. And over the last 3 years of migrating my fandom into more research-based and doing a podcast and writing, doing everything I can independently to bring forth, less narrative and more real
doing it yourself
conversation.
too.
Yeah,
You're
all by
doing it
myself.
yourself.
I mean,
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
a co-host Eric, and I've had some other people involved, but yeah, I'm a one-man band over here doing all this for the first time, learning it all on the fly. But if I were to segregate that part of my fandom into the journalistic side or the evaluator side, the talent evaluator side, honestly, it's the tape, man. It's the film. It doesn't lie. And my favorite aspect is just kind of stripping away that national media fluff, the narrative basis, getting straight into the raw metrics in the film, and just seeing who these players are. And it's a process of really identifying, you got the exact physical parameters. You get that just, from looking the guys up in the combine results, but watching it on the film, watching it in person, like that's the best part of this to me. And I've been going to the combine, to your point, for several years, more than 10. And I did go this year, finally credentialed through the NFL. Thankfully, I'm surprised an independent was able to, but I was. And that just gave me a different look from behind the scenes, if you will. So I would say that is probably my favorite aspect of the draft process, is just stripping it all down and getting to know these players a little bit more intimately, and then trying to figure out where they line up, where are they going to get drafted, and who's going to slip, and who's going to get, the draft day steal. I mean, there's just so much to this that really invigorates you as a fan.
Before Jake asks a follow-up question, because I know he has one on this year's draft particularly, I would say this straight up, and I said this to a Seahawks guy. Well, they're drafted 32 this year. I do not anticipate the Ravens nor the Lions drafting at 14 and 17 next year. My expectation for both teams is that they'll be drafted in the late 20s or, 31, 32 in some kind of order. So the website, before Jake asks a question here, the website is Draftsignal.Pro. We have engaged a number of people to try to provide evaluations, and it's been amazing to get the interaction. Will runs Detroit Football Journal, and Rocked On Lions, a YouTube site that caters to Lions fans, and you do it every day, right, Will?
Every day. So the Rise and Grind morning show is on. It's supposed to be 8 a.m. Some days it's 8:30, but 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sometimes it's noon that we get
I don't get there till 9.
Yeah. So it's an everyday thing, Monday through Friday, and then obviously videos, 365. We talk Lions, man. We talk football. More importantly, it's football conversations, and again, it's stripping back the media fluff. Even though I'm credentialed, that doesn't mean that I'm media per se. I still want to be known as a fan, and I'm trying to cut through the fat. There's too much narrative out there, too much negative energy out there in the media, and I want to be different. And I think we're starting to finally rub the right people the wrong way, and we're having fun with it. So I think fans are starting to listen now.
Well, I love going on with you guys in the morning because I can show up, right at my availability, 9 o'clock or 9:05, and it's always super fun. You and Eric, and the questions especially.
Yeah, fans love it, man. And you being a Ravens fan and quasi Lions fan, if you will. I mean, the way that you do your business and how fun and interactive your videos are. You've really developed such a nice niche in the community, and you're very well respected. I will tell you that everybody in my community really respects everything that you do. So, big ups to you, man. You're doing it right.
Thanks, man. Likewise.
Awesome. So I have a question about the overall player pool, but I'll get back to that in a second. I have another question real quick, just because I'm curious to see what when you're at the combine, is there specific things that you're looking for or as an evaluator? Like, is it just verifying like what you see on tape? Is it the measurables? Is it, networking, talking to agents or whoever it may be? Is there something specific that you go like, this is what I'm going to do when I'm there?
So in years past, going as a fan, I've always tried to run into people, right? And try to put myself in a position where I can meet somebody. As an aspiring scout, I've always wanted to find my way in and meet the right people to get there. This year, as credentialed media, so I'm behind the curtain, if you will. I'm behind Wizard of Oz, the curtain for the first time. So I have full access. If I want to talk to people, I can talk to people. If I want to try to run into a scout, I can run into a scout. I scheduled some meetings for that week to try to, get in the room and have some conversations. And so it was a different perspective for me because now I get to see everything up front. I'm in the room to be able to talk to the players, see the players firsthand. I had a chance opportunity to chat with Mr. Kadyn Proctor for a few moments in the hallway. And so those types of experiences all kind of lend to the overall evaluation. But to your main question, like, what am I really looking for when I go to the combine? You touched on it. I want to marry up what I'm seeing on film with some of the drills that they're doing there. And I get that a lot of people don't take, or put a lot of stock into the combine. They call it the pajama party, or, like Brad Holmes says, it's, the height, weight, speed. He doesn't really care about too much. It's all film. And I would agree with that. But there's certain things that I see during the drill portion that can help validate the things that you can't see on film all the time, because let's be honest, the film is not right up in your face, unless you have full access to collegiate film and high grade film. It's pretty hard to evaluate everything. So if I can get there in person, go to games, which I do a few, it's now I get to validate that fluid movement, watching the hips, right? Are they catching the ball out in front? Those are the things that I look for. I try to look for the things that I can see and take away what I've learned and then marry it up to the film. Like, okay, I watched what he did in the gauntlet drill. I mean, he ran that line straight. He's got superior balance, catches the ball out in front. He's quick. He's twitchy. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can pick up, the edge rushers, how they turn it around the bags, the 4-bag drill. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of opportunity to pick up on the little things. Knee height, as they're stepping up, how's their knee height? And so I pick up a lot. It's my first year being behind the scenes, so I'm only going to get better. I've only been doing this a few years, and quite honestly, a full year now of really evaluating, taking some classes, and talking to people behind the scenes is helped me get a little bit further as I get along.
It's interesting. One of the points you bring up about seeing it up close, because a guy who had the opportunity to interview and talk to Friday night, Dan Viennes from Seahawks Forever podcast, Gone on his
Great guy.
show a handful of times. Yeah, he's awesome. Gone on his show a handful of times. Great guy. And he said something interesting. He said, you can see the guys who do their rep and, they kind of just are there, but they're not really participating between reps, which may not make sense to people who never played sports or, particularly football. He said, but then you can also see the guys who are really engaged between reps. He went to the Senior Bowl. I should, specify. He's talking college players, so they're there to, it's a job interview, but so is the combine. So is the combine. He was talking about their approach between reps, before reps, whether they're paying attention or not, and then feedback after the rep, after the snap that they took, quote unquote. And so it's interesting to hear you, phrase it that way, to be able to see it up close and maybe identify some of those things.
Yeah, and to his point, honestly, I mean that's a whole nother side of this that, when you read what scouts say or you hear what scouts are talking about and you listen to the GMs and the coaches speak throughout the year, there's a lot of things that they identify that are more important than just the skills on the field. And it's, from the neck up, are they smart? Can they do chalk talk really well? But it's also teammate. Are you a good teammate? Those are not your teammates, but they could be someday. Are you there helping them? Are you, in the fight with them? Are you cheering them on? Are you building camaraderie? Are you showing leadership? So yeah, there's a lot of other things. If you just watch people, I'm a good people watcher. So if you just watch them as they work behind the scenes, they're off to the side. What are they doing? Are they in their own zone? Sometimes they're in their own zone because they know they're going out there, they're putting their performance on. But when they're done, what are they doing? Do they just go back to the side and get on their phone, or are they, they back in the fight with the guys, building camaraderie? So yeah, Dan's a super great dude, and I would agree wholeheartedly that there's so many little things you can pick up on.
What's you two guys' favorite position groups in this draft?
Are you asking both of us? I'm sorry.
Yep.
At the very beginning, you heard a lot about edge. And I was a bit concerned because I had a feeling that the arm length was going to come up short with some of the, preconceived notions that I already had through some of the workups that I was doing. And some of that was validated. But I still believe that this is a fairly decent, deep draft for defensive line and the edge position. If you're looking for, more of the, tier 2 type of guy, the backup, the higher, how do I want to put it? If you're looking for a dominant depth player, there's going to be plenty of them in this draft. I think the blue chippers are going to be, pretty quick. It's going to fade pretty quick. You might get a couple of lucky ones later in later rounds, but the edge position, defensive line, I would probably lump it in as a whole. Mm-hmm. And then, honestly, the offensive line, like I was extremely excited about it, but then I see a bunch of right tackles. But man, there are some really good maulers in this draft that have positional flexibility. But I would say that my second best my second most favorite would be the receiver class. I think that there's some interesting prospects. Yeah, there's some interesting prospects in this class.
Yeah, to your point, I agree that it is a very good depth draft. There's a lot of guys that can go anywhere from round 2 to round 5, round 6 even, they're floor raisers. So you want to build the depth up. We've had a number of injuries last year. We can think of that. We wish in hindsight we had somebody that was a little, more talented or whatever. So it's a really good draft in terms of, finding guys that are going to either contribute on special teams, but you can trust if you have to plug them in at some point. I also agree wide receiver is my favorite. There's so many talented players in this draft. I think was it Dane Brugler had like 19 or something in his top 100.
Top 100, yeah.
Insane. But it's not just one type of receiver. There's, the tall jump ball, play above the rim possession guys. There's the speedy guys. There's the, Makai Lemon slot, get open, create yards after catch type. So that's my favorite one out of all of them. That I agree. Lots of depth on the D line as well, but just overall wide receivers, my number one.
So do you want to do, you want to do your offense eval guy first? So guys that are listening or watching, I asked Will to come up with 2 players, actually 3, that he'd like to talk about. But the third one we're going to hold until later, because that's going to be your guy that you'd like to see the Lions get at 17. So it was Sadiq, right, the tight end?
Yeah, and I mean, I'd be remiss to say that I wouldn't want to see Sadiq in the Honolulu Blue. You know, again, if Brad is a BPA guy, this draft is going to test his BPA ability, because the best player overall may not be the best player that you need to fill a hole with. And I know that's kind of like an oxymoron in the NFL and, you know, around the draft time, that, you know, you're either drafting for needs or you're drafting for best player available. And quite honestly, if Kenyon Sadiq was at 17 and Brad was sticking and picking, he's the best player available, you know, depending on who else is available. But very interesting prospect from the perspective that, man, he needed to come into the combine and totally, you know, set the scouts' minds at ease. You know, he has the functional length. He's fast on film. His ungodly 145.5 passer rating when targeted. He's your quarterback's best friend. You know, he's a chain mover. He's someone that, you know, historically you get on your sidelines, he's going to help you win ball games. You know, the overall consensus at Indy was, what is his efficiency? You know, his efficiency ratings at the collegiate level, how is that going to pair with the athletic benchmarks at the combine? And he decided to test and measure and do all the things that were required. And man, did he test. He blew the doors off. You know, the 40-yard dash and ran a 4.39, which that solidified who he is. He's not a Y tight end. He's the next Kelvin Johnson of the tight end position, might be the highest drafted tight end since Kyle Pitts. I'm not sure that he's going to go number 4, but I could see Kenyon Sadiq going in the top 10. I have him number 8 right now on my board as the 8th best player available out of my top 25. He has one, you know, limitation, and that is the drops. And I think it's you know, an alarming metric that really stems from his habit of body catching. That is one thing that he's going to have to work on, is catching that ball out in front. Mm-hmm. But you're provided, you know, with a 43.5-inch vertical and a 4.39 40. I think that some teams are going to overlook a few things as long as you're going to catch the ball. He's got a little bit of a ways to go, but you can't pass on a guy like this. Unmatched speed. I think he has the unteachable football IQ. And that was another thing that really showed up, was during the chalk talk portion. I mean, he completely overwhelmed the scouts, the coaches, the GMs, you know, during the interview process. He was labeled as one of the best interviews out of the entire combine. Those are the kinds of guys you want.
Chances he's there. Not that, you know, he's going to be the pick at 17, but just so everyone knows, I prepped or asked Will to give me, you know, an offensive defense guy to show his evaluation of, and not necessarily explain it, but just talk about the player, why you like him. Sure. And so, you know, going off of that for a moment, or branching off of that, chances he's there at 17 in your opinion?
Man, I think it really depends on what happens, you know, with players like Ruben Bain, and how evaluators plug him in. Is he really going to stick at top 10? Is he going to wash out and maybe still be a top 20? I think it really matters if an extra quarterback goes in the top 10. I don't see it happening, but if it does, well, that starts pushing him down a couple of spots.
Right.
If there's another, you know, tackle in this class that somehow sneaks up into the top 10 outside of, you know, Maui Goa, I probably pronounced his name wrong. It can easily start pushing dynamic players like this down the board. Chances on a percentage scale, I'm going to say honestly 50%. I think he has a 50% chance of being there at 17.
What do you think, Jake?
He's someone that I've been like talking myself into at 14. But like you said, it really depends on how the board falls in front of you, whether, you know, a Ty Simpson sneaks into the top 15 somehow, or if there's a run on receivers, or however it may be, edge rushers go early, you know, Cassius Howell pops up into the top 15 or something like that. So I agree. It's probably It just depends on how it unfolds, but I would say it's probably 50% chance he's there still, 40 to 50.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking 25, 30, but super talented and fun to watch.
So where do you think he goes if he's not there at 17? Like where does he fall?
You mean what team?
Yeah. What do you
Oh,
think?
I don't no idea. I mean, I have no idea about that.
You put him in an offense like Kansas City's, that just adds
Yeah.
another dynamic playmaker.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the exact name I didn't want to hear. The exact team
I know. I don't think anybody does.
No, they're
But it
not
makes
messing
sense.
around.
It makes sense with Travis Kelce, pretty much 1 foot out the door. It would make sense for them to add another dynamic playmaker that essentially is going to be one of the fastest slot receivers that can go out wide and run, the perimeter all day long. I mean,
It makes 12, 11,
he's
or
insane.
he can merge those personnel designations, because of his ability to play receiver too.
Yep.
Let's do the defensive guy that you've got. And I know that, again, we're not saying that you're going to pick him at 17, but just, a safety guy, super gifted physically and also great at forcing fumbles. I think it's him and Avion Terrell they just have like the touch of death on the football. It's like if they tackle you, they knock the ball loose. What do you really like about Emani McNeil-Warren? Your evaluation was super complete because, you did mention, the level of talent that he was facing. But it's so interesting, like you and Jason Smith, who we just talked to, Jake and I. He runs Huddled Up Films. He's a Ravens fan. Some real, what's the word, overlapping of some of the evals that you guys did as far as the players you chose, but also some of the things you pointed out. But anyway, what do you like about it?
I mean, what is there not to like about a safety that is 6'3" that can run the way that he runs? Now, I know that, at the combine, the goal for him was to get, below that sub 5, that 4.49. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around a number that is only 0.03 seconds short. I guess a 4.4 is a 4.4, whether it's a 4.41 or a 4.49. I guess the evaluators don't give it the same credence if it's a 4.52. So what I see about this guy is an immense ability to break up the pass. I know he's not a big time ball hawk. I mean, he's more of a bruiser, man. I mean, he comes up and likes to lay the wood in the run game. I think that he diagnoses offensive concepts quickly. I think he's a high processor. He utilizes those long arms for him, at the catch point. And quite honestly, again, when he arrived at Indianapolis, I was hoping to see that he was going to run a little bit faster. But then again, I was thinking, man, if he just knocks off a little bit, maybe he's there at 17 too, because he's also someone that I would love to see in Detroit, given our safety issues.
Right.
But he absolutely backed up that straight line speed, even though it was 4.52, 35.5-inch vertical, 10'2" broad. I mean, he just confirmed that he's explosive.
Exactly.
The 5.5 tackles for loss. He's not afraid to come up into the box. He's not afraid, to do the dirty work. But that 33.3% forced incompletion rate, I think, is huge. Anytime you have a 67% chance of only catching a football, and he's going to take away the other 33.3%, that's exactly who I want as an enforcer up near the line of scrimmage.
I included film here of his, on the site for anyone navigating. I included film here of him. I think he had 8 or maybe 9. I think it was 8 or 9. But like I said, with you and Jason from Huddled Up Films, both of you obviously talked about the Emani,
yes, and
comparisons.
So that's another big comparison. So in all my years of doing this with few, publicly, but behind the scenes, I have rarely seen a back-to-back draft with an identical physical profile. You've got Emani McNeil-Warren. If you missed out on that sweepstakes last year, well, now you're one of 32 teams that has a chance this year. Warren is an immediate second chance for you to redeem yourself. If you subtract 19 pounds of mass and 0.14 seconds of straight line speed and 7.5 inches from his vertical leap, which is a ton, you have the same player, essentially. I think that he's a defensive chess piece at the next level. I think that he's primarily going to be down closer to the line of scrimmage. Maybe that's just my evaluation. I know that I did a few evaluations like Dylan Thieneman, and people think that I'm crazy for putting Dylan ahead of him, but I think that there's very distinct reasons, why that these
Good
players,
safety group. Good
yeah,
safety group.
they're all
here.
different. You have box safety, you have free safety, and you have strong safety. And I think that strong safety is where Emani McNeil-Warren's going to end up.
If he finds himself in a place, well, who can replicate what Mike McDonald can do? I don't know who that person is. We Ravens fans, we hope it's Jesse Minter, right? If he finds himself in a place where someone can teach him and instruct him and utilize him the way that McDonald did Emani, who knows? Maybe there's a third guy, a third year in a row. I don't see one. We do. Jake and I have already committed to getting started on the 27 website /draft. I don't know, May at some point to start building it. And this guy, I agree. When you and Jason mentioned Emani, I think he sent his eval in first and you sent yours in second. Usually, so usually the order is whoever sends it in first is the top one, the way that it filters, and then whoever sent it in second. I think it was a day separation, and both of you mentioned Emani. There's Jason's, Kyle Hamilton as well, and then there's yours down here. So it's pretty cool, man, to see. Well, to be blessed with so many people willing to say yes to what I asked them, number one, and then number two, to see some real overlap of what people were describing from the players.
That means we're seeing the field properly, I hope. I mean, I'm still the young buck doing this, and I spend way too much time doing research, and I've got to do a lot more research on these guys and watching as much film as I can, because I can't get to all their games, right?
Of course, right, of course.
When a team decides to pay me to fly everywhere, well, then that's a different story.
Well, that's what this site is for, hopefully, is for people to be able to step into it briefly. And I'll tell you one thing that actually, Jake, you mentioned this to me about a week ago, or maybe more, was, instead of showing one play on a player's highlight, show like 6 or 7, show game film. And so let me do Terrell, and then I'll ask you about 17 here in a moment. I think I did Terrell's game film against Syracuse. And this is just an example of people who are willing to click on the button. I'm not going to, for obvious reasons, on this video. You can see 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 plays in a row of a player against a certain team, generally be spot shadowed like you see there in red. And I think that was your suggestion, right, Jake?
Yep. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And it really helped. That's what I want to do in the future, is provide more lengthy clips of like the 3 or 4 minute range for people to watch. We're trying to filter it down, is what we're trying to do.
I love it, man. It's always good to be able to read through an eval and then go watch the film and say, okay, I see that. Yeah. I see how he's, a little bit twitchy, or I can see that first step. There's so much to gain from reading and then watching immediately.
We thought about, as far as formatting, we thought about, evals vertically in one column and the film next to it, because what we don't want is I'm going to reveal, unfortunately, your next player that you're going to talk about from my question. But we thought about having the evals flow, in one column on the left and the film on the right, because what we don't want is people on the site, just scrolling down and just stopping here and not actually getting to the film that's underneath.
Maybe there's a way you can park that up in the eval and kind of take the words and crop it out a little bit. But you know what? The biggest thing that I think you're going to receive is just get the fans' perspective and have them send you in some good comments on this video and let him know if there's any suggestions that maybe would make it easier.
100% power in numbers. So people now know the answer to my next question. Who do you see the Lions taking at pick 17?
I don't think it's any surprise that the Detroit Lions need a left tackle. Obviously, Taylor Decker decided to gamble and walk away, wanted his release. We're left with a hole over there. I'm not going to take 30 minutes and explain why, but there's always the chance that Penei Sewell could go to the left. I'm not solid, on that move happening. So I think that the Lions are more than likely looking to a left tackle. And I know that there's been some evaluations where they put Kadyn Proctor in this box that, he's a little bit too big, a little bit too slow. And then they say, well, Cassius Howell, ate him up on a couple of reps. And I think what people forget about is that Kadyn Proctor was about 370 pounds at that time. And he was a little bit slower. He wasn't able to set, fast enough, honestly, and Cassius Hall beat him to the punch. But it was only a couple of reps. I mean, throughout his entire career, I mean, the guy barely gives up anything when it comes to sacks, hurries, hits. And honestly, now that he's at his optimal weight, he weighed in at 352 at the combine. The day before I talked to him, he weighed in at 348, and that's where he wants to play. I think that when teams, take that approach of managing his weight, helping him with his weight, and making sure that he's weighing in daily, this won't be a problem. If he stays at his true playing weight, 348, 352, he's one of the heaviest handed left tackles I've seen in a long time. There is so much upside to him, and as he gets integrated into the NFL playing world, he's going to develop even more, obviously. But his body type is in size is going to change. Even 1 year removed from college, with better habits, healthier eating, whatever he's doing at the next level, he's going to get stronger and faster. He only carries 27% body fat on a 6 foot 6 5/8 frame that weighs 350 pounds. Like it's incredible. He's on the freaks list for a reason.
Great O-line coach there in Detroit too, and Hank Fraley. He knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
And then you've got Sewell over there on the other side, who's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Not just athletic talent, but his technique as well. I believe, maybe I've never expressed this to you, I believe Sewell played 3 or 4 games last year that a lot of other offensive linemen wouldn't have played in. He's meaning because of health. And I'm not saying he was at 50%, but there's some film of Sewell in 2025 that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And it primarily exists in a 3 to 4 week span later in the year. So I think Sewell is the same guy in 2026 that he's always been, if he's fully healthy. So
Sure.
Them going for tackle at 17, well, the alternative, right, waiting to go tackle until 50, it doesn't work. It doesn't.
Not in this draft. There's so many right tackles in this draft, and I guess I have a lot of heartburn, and I'll defer to somebody smarter than me, but I have a lot of heartburn with right tackles moving to the left side. I think it's a very unnatural move, and if you want to be or have the best opportunity at the left tackle position, you draft the left tackle that's been doing it for years. You don't draft the right tackle that's been a right tackle his whole life and say, go protect the blind side. I think that's a much harder transition. Not to say that it hasn't been done, because it has. I just think naturally the progression would be to find a left tackle that fits what you need. And I think that based on my evaluation, I think that Kadyn Proctor is just as good in zone as he is in the gap. His grade was a 70.3 in the gap, 83.6 in the zone, and the Lions run both. So I think, he's going to be just fine with whatever scheme that he goes to. He's very versatile that way. You can't replace, 33 and 3/8 inch arms and an 81 and 5/8 wingspan. You can't replace a body type like this. These are very rare specimens that don't come around very often. There's a couple more things about him that I love this personality. So talking about the combine, being able to get in front of him and talk to him and hear how he was speaking to others. I think he has that natural born leader inside of him. And he was just so charismatic, and you could tell that he's going to be a good locker room guy. I haven't read one bad thing about him.
Yeah, you didn't schedule something with him. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said to me before that you had just ran into him in the hallway, and the presentation was respectful and completely professional already.
100%. And so where you're, got a bunch of media guys around you and people you don't know, I think more guys would probably try to walk away and not deal with it because they don't want to slip up or say something that gets them in trouble. I mean, you are talking to someone with a media pass. But he stopped. He said, yeah, man, a couple minutes. And I asked him a couple of questions. What was your ideal playing weight? He said, under 350. I said, have teams spoken to you about playing guard? And he said, yes, a few teams mentioned it. And I said, well, how do you feel about moving inside? And he said, I took all my reps at left tackle. That is where I want to play. And I said, if a team, asks you or says that they would only draft you with the option of left tackle in the future, but you have to start at guard. He said, as long as I'm playing, I'm happy with whatever. So I get the sense that Kadyn just wants to play football. And of course he wants to play left tackle, but he's willing to work for it. At the next level, gosh, if you have him in at left guard or right guard, it's an immovable object that is going to just dismantle tackles with displacement power that I don't think that we've seen in a long time. I mean, he's an incredible athlete. A few weeks ago, I came across it in an Instagram video of his, a workout video at the academy where he's training. And you want to talk about raw power? That video got me amped up enough to really dig into tape that day to see who he was. So I'm not afraid at Kadyn Proctor at number 17. I do think the Lions could trade back and probably still get him at 23, 24, 25. But I don't know that you take that chance. I think you just take the guy, and Brad's the way Brad Holmes operates. He's just going to take the guy. He will reach to take the guy that he wants. He doesn't care, because in 2 or 3 seasons, when you go back and reevaluate his draft, like 2023, everybody's eating crow on the Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs, and the Jack Campbell picks. So
there's benefits to drafting. There's benefits to drafting Proctor in the first round too, and getting that extra 5th-year option, because he doesn't turn 21 until June. So he's still developing, physically, and it's a very interesting note about his character too, because that, for a 20-year-old, that makes me all that more excited about him,
Yeah, super, super nice guy. Gentle giant is what I refer to him as, because I told him right to his face. I said, I'm really pulling for you, not just to become a Detroit Lion. I said, but I've seen the things that people have written and said about you, and I don't believe it. I see a totally different style of an athlete. And he just said, man, I respect that. And, we shook hands, walked away, but just a great, phenomenal individual chance meeting.
It's so funny that Jake mentions that, first of all, because I was actually going to say, Will, you may not know this, but Jake has a ton of knowledge about college players because of his, previous profession, but then also, what he chooses to do, like in our Ravens Discord, he's like the draft guy, way more, I would say, ahead of the game than I am. I just watch the film. That's it. But Jake knows, various things like the guy's age. I have no awareness of those things whatsoever. What's your follow up on Proctor there, Jake? It's, because it's interesting for us being the second year in a row, Ravens and Lions are drafting near each other, right? The year before, the Lions were one after us near the end of the first round. And then, of course, they traded up in front of us and took Tate Ratledge. I think that's related. I think they were, getting a guard because they thought we may take one, but, other people don't have the same belief. And now we're drafting three spots ahead of you guys.
Yeah, he's a guy that I watched multiple times throughout the year, and the early tape was rough. But as the season progressed, you could see his play start to pick up. And like in the important games, he started to play really well. So, and considering the fact that he is still young, he's still developing, still getting better. So I think if you're a team in the late first round that needs a tackle like the Lions or somebody down the line like the Eagles or something, he's worth taking in the first round. You can't teach size, and he's got it. So
yeah, that's the age-old thing, man. With scouting evaluations or just in general, you can't teach speed. It's pretty tough to teach intelligence. You can teach people the nuances of the game. You can help them get smarter, through the scheme. You can actually make players play better through the scheme, but you can't teach a few things. And I do believe that he is someone that has it from the neck up. And I think that, to your point, that early tape was a little bit rough. I forget what week it was that A&M and the Bama game. But anyway, I'll digress. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's really hard to go out there and find another body type like this, and they just don't grow on trees. I know a lot of Lions fans are going to be disappointed that I'm not taking an edge first, but I do believe that the secondary value for edge in the second round, guys like Malachi Lawrence,
there's a ton of them.
There's plenty, or even the defensive lineman in DeMonte Capehart, who I think is an absolute animal. There's plenty of opportunity for the Lions to get better either through the middle or off the edge, and they'll find a way to do it.
Now we added for the site, these two guys, Arvil Reese and Sonny Styles, to hybrid linebacker edge. Sonny Styles is obviously going to play inside linebacker. Reese has declared what he wants to do. So we added them to that group so that, that does a +1 or a +2. This is a really good group, I think, at edge defender. And you can find value second round, third round. You even look at a guy like a Max Llewellyn, or however you say his last name, from Iowa. He gives you some declared strength, which is pass rush potential on a 6'5" frame. And he's a Vincent Anthony from Duke is another one. Those guys will be there late fourth into the fifth. So to your point, tackles do not extend to round two at all, really. But definitely not round three. I know the Lions don't have a pick there round three right now. Brad Holmes likes to, as he calls it, move around the board. But edge depth does extend quite far. So Lions fans, I think, should not overreact on day one. Oh, we didn't go edge defender. There's going to be a good edge defender there at 45, whether it's, a Zion Young, whether it's a Deni Dennis Sutton. There's going to be a good edge player there. And there'll even be guys in the fourth round who have some declared ability, that they're good at. Even the other guy from Texas Tech, Romello Height, he's certainly older. I think he's 24 already, but he's got pass rush potential at the end of the fourth round, theoretically, that, other guys are not going to have. Other positions, don't necessarily offer the same depth unless you're talking about, safety or maybe corner.
A guy that Lions fans might be familiar with, Jayshon Barham. I'm familiar with him from his time at Maryland. He just started getting full-time reps at edge this past year, and he's got the explosiveness, the strength, the physicality, and he's not a guy that's going to go, too high. So if you're sitting there late second, early third, whatever it may be, he's another intriguing guy that it's just another name to add to the ever-growing list of edge depth.
There's a ton of edge depth, to your both your guys' points in this class. You're not going to get necessarily the high floor guys, coming in that are going to be able to help you maybe as a starter from day one, but the depth is so important. And I think, I always use the term that, we're all the sum of our parts and pieces, and on an NFL, roster, you need a lot of parts and pieces to make the puzzle work. And the depth is extremely critical. And for the last 5 seasons, the Lions have been the top 6th most injured team in the league every year. They've been number 1, number 2, number 4, number 6.
Absolutely.
And their depth is the only reason why they are able to win 15 games. Now, they didn't have anything left in the gas tank when they got to divisional round, but without that depth, you're just not going to make it to the Super Bowl. You have to stay healthy. For guys like for guys like you that you mentioned, like fourth round, I think the 24-year-old, I'm glad you mentioned him because, that's where you're going to get a high floor guy, a guy that has been around the block a few extra times.
Romello Height, you're talking about, right?
And he's going to come in and be able to give you a lot more than that 20-year-old or that 21-year-old that maybe a little bit less experience, but still being taken in the fourth round, depending on, what their bag of tricks are. So there is still some very good value. And I think if anyone's going to find it, I think Brad Holmes and their scout team does a great job at that.
Jake may not be aware of it. The Lions have 2 fifth-round picks, 2 sixth-round picks. They got 1 fourth, I believe, but no third.
No third yet. We'll have a third.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He likes to move around a ton. So I think that, your point from a couple of minutes ago is sharp, that, not going edge defender in round 1 doesn't mean that Detroit's not going to address it. I think that might be that concern, not that you expressed it, but you're expressing it for other Lions fans. That concern might be born out of last year's draft where they didn't go edge defender until round 6, at all. So, and Ravens fans have the same types of reactions / overreactions at times. Last year's draft, we kind of get frustrated sooner in this year's draft if things aren't going in the directions we want them to. What would be your ideal? Let's do round 1 and 2. Give me one scenario or maybe 2 for 17 and 50. You don't have to go to the fourth round at all, but give me one scenario or maybe 2 if you want.
Yeah. So for round 1, obviously, if the board is falling the way that I think it's going to fall, Kadyn Proctor is going to be available. I can see Brad Holmes either attempting a trade back if maybe he has 3, 4, 5 guys that he really likes and they're still available. Then I think a trade back happens and he's going to take whatever one of the 3 or 4 guys. If it's, if Emani McNeil-Warren is on the board, if Kadyn Proctor's on the board, if Keldrick Falk is on the board, if TJ Parker's on the board, then if he trades back to pick 21 or 22, he's still going to get an extremely good athlete and he's going to plug that player in wherever they be. But I would still go with Kadyn Proctor just to solidify that left tackle position of the future. I'm less sold on on Caleb Lomu for other reasons. And I think there's too many right tackles in this draft to bank on one in the second round. And then at pick number 2, with the way that the boards have been falling right now, that the Danny Dennis Sutton, I don't have the latest and greatest on where he's moved to. I haven't seen him anywhere near 50 that I can think of. But Malachi Lawrence, I think, is that instant edge upgrade for the Lions. I mean, he's someone that I caught wind of maybe a few days before the combine. And then that night, after the edge did their thing, I was intrigued. I dove in. I watched as much film as I could find. And I really like where he's growing right now. I think that there is so much upside to this guy. But if Brad decides to completely do something crazy, which I'm looking at our linebacker position right now, and I'm wondering, okay, you didn't do anything big in the draft or in the free agency. You're obviously going to leave the last position or two for the linebacker room to the draft. I don't really care for the linebacker class outside of the first round. There's a couple of guys, but I just don't see a lot of outside linebackers, will linebackers that fit what I want to see. I could be totally wrong there, but from what I want to see as a really good upgrade over like an Alex Anzalone that we no longer have.
Right.
So if he's going to do something crazy, I would not put it past Brad Holmes, who's never said, forget the picks or forget the money. Maybe this year he says, forget the picks. Maybe he cashes in next year's first and this year's fourth, and he goes right up to number 5 or number 6 in this draft, and he takes that next linebacker of the future. I'm not going to put it past him to do something like that because Brad has done crazier things.
Your initial point about Proctor and possibly trading back, when you were describing it, all I heard was Jahmyr Gibbs versus Bijan Robinson. That's all I heard was, that whole dynamic, which he parlayed, beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in position 14 and 17, 14 for Baltimore, 17 for Detroit. Great opportunities to possibly trade back. I know that it will be disappointing to trade out of the first round. I could absolutely see some of these other front offices who have a late first round pick wanting to move into the teens. I could see it happening. I don't know that. People like me and you will be up late either way, producing content at 2 a.m. after the first round. I still remember that night after he traded back and he got Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. I remember my videos. One of the first that I did on the Detroit draft reaction, and I will link it up in the description. People can check it out if they want. I was like, this is a home run. This is an absolute. And then the next day you get, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, and then, of course, Hendon Hooker, who's no longer with the team.
I've looked into about every trade scenario, and what Lions fans need to be rest assured about is, I've seen, pick 27 to 14. I think it was the Saints. Matter of fact, I think they chose Marcus Davenport. But they gave up pick 27, a first round pick next year, the year following, and a 5th round pick. It was 2019 to move up to get Marcus Davenport. So if the Lions were to do something like that, yeah, we would lose out on a first round pick, but gain one next year.
Yeah.
We would gain the 27th and then get a first round pick next season. Those are the types of moves that can solidify a draft, because you could turn around and trade that first round pick for the, that you just picked up and move back up into the first round and double dip into the first round pretty easily. So there's those types of options that are available. And I think at an absolute minimum, if the Lions are going from 17 to 23 or 24, they're going to get a pick swap plus a 3rd round pick this year, which is exactly what they need. And maybe they parlay some other picks and try to, move up, even closer into the 2nd round.
Another
like
third or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Trade 50 to move up into, the top, or the bottom of the 30s.
It's so interesting.
Plenty of options.
I've said this in Lions videos before, and Jake will be able to second this. Ravens front office, we stick and pick. We stick and pick. Now this year, of course, we did trade away 2 firsts for Max Crosby, and then that trade was,
that was fun.
Blew up. But it's so unique for me because Brad Holmes is not that guy. Brad Holmes says, okay, I like this player, Tate Ratledge, I'm going to go get him.
Yep.
Or I prefer this guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, and another pick on day 2 versus Bijan Robinson. You couldn't go wrong with either Gibbs or Robinson, but he was willing to move back 6 picks, right, from 6 to 12.
Correct, yeah. Yep.
So, it's just interesting for us, as Ravens fans, to consider that freedom that he has to move around the board. That's his phrase, Jake, by the way. Brad Holmes says it. He even kind of like waves his hand. We like to move around the board a little bit. It's so funny, as a Ravens fan, to hear someone even say that phrase.
It's like he's playing Monopoly out there, man. He's just rolling the dice and he's pass and go. He's
I just fired up the mock draft simulator here, and I took Proctor in the first round. It's kind of going back to the edge depth thing. R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Yakus, Malachi Lawrence, Joshua Joseph, Derek Moore, Sutton.
Wow.
I mean, Romello Height, LT. There's just a bunch of names on here, which, don't freak out if you don't go edge first round, because there's going to be a bunch that'll go in that second round, early third range.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me throwing a curveball, I don't know if you're editing this or what, but Ruben Bain, can somebody give me an honest opinion on Ruben Bain? Is that possible?
What do you mean?
Well, the arm length, the sub 31, the shortest arms ever in the last 20 years, expecting him to come in and be an edge defender that is still going to play as violent and be able to get free from tackles. I have a huge concern with that. Not that it matters. I don't think the Lions are going to go up and pick him. And if he somehow falls to 17, I still don't think the Lions would take him. Even though Aiden has a little bit of the short arms as well, different body style completely altogether.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Ruben Bain and his ability at the next level? Because I see him dropping back playing linebacker, even though he's doesn't fit that body type wise.
Yeah, the length and size issues are definitely something that I keep in mind, but it's kind of like going back to what we were talking about with the combine. You just watch the tape and he dominates all over. So you got to weigh the measurements versus what you see on the tape. And I think his tape is just outstanding. So I do think he has a chance to fall a little bit, but in a draft where there's not really a lot of like elite level talents, he'll probably still end up going top 12 at worst.
Okay. I think I have him at 13 right now. And I guess my whole thing is when I look at guys and I try to fit them into a profile, and I remember I'm still young at doing this, is I think, okay, the worst or the best guy that you faced in college is going to be the absolute worst guy that you're going to face at the NFL. And going up against 35-inch, arms and, 6'7" giant men on the offensive line, I'm just wondering how he's going to disengage when I watch other players that have 32-inch arms and they have a rough time disengaging from some of the lengthier left or right tackles in the game today. They have trouble winning their one-on-ones, and I just see him getting swallowed up unless he's on a defense that's running a ton of games, at the line of scrimmage and, twisting and stunning to get him open to, free fire through a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the scheme, I think he's going to be scheme dependent, I guess is where I'm going with that. I think he's just going to be.
You know what he looks like on film to me? He looks like a guy who plays, when you watch his film, he's so dominant at times. He looks like a guy who's playing against Division II caliber players.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like to me. I think he's a top 5 player in this draft. I don't think there's any chance he's there at 14 at all. If he is, he ain't going to be there at 17 because we're going to take him.
Wow.
I think he's got the potential to be a 12, 15 sack a guy player in the next 2 or 3 years. 2 NFL teams measured him at 32 inches, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Someone has
I forget where I found it. This is the third person I've mentioned this to, so I have to make sure I go find this. There's some type of differential. It's a graphic that's horizontal bars, almost like a stem and leaf kind of. And it's measurement at the Senior Bowl for players, measurement at the pro day, and then the measurement at the combine, like where that grades, and it's wrong. It's like the measurement at the combine is consistently over here. So I'm interested to see if some of this stuff changes at all, because I see more inconsistency with the arm measurements at the combine than I do at the Senior Bowl.
I've heard that's a thing too, like that scouts have taken note of, is the differences in arm length specifically. Just, I don't know if there's a different way that they're measuring people or whatever it may be, but I think the big one, I don't know if his pro days happened yet, but it won't really change much. I mean, I think everybody's got their own opinions on him at this point, but I think, Carnell Tate's another one with the 40 time. Is that what you see a lot of scouts saying? He runs the high 4.4s instead of 4.53. It's just, there's differences across the board, and it confuses people, but it shouldn't.
I
Go ahead,
thought,
sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I thought that I had
Okay.
heard that the Senior Bowl had some issues with measurements, and then they were validated at the combine. Do I have that backwards?
I don't know. I can't pretend
You
to
could
know.
be right. Yeah, I just know that there's, they're playing the blame game, pointing fingers at each other.
At each other. Right.
I don't know, man. You've been measuring athletes for a very long time. I would hope that they've got that easy thing figured out by now, but
Yeah.
that makes you wonder about all the other players that have come through, as to what their true measurements were. Or
Yeah, Micah Parsons was 31.5 at the combine, and then 32.3 at a pro or something like that. So it was a 32 and 3/8 or 30 something. So it just makes me wonder. For me, what I was taught was watch the film.
Yep.
And when I watch the film, I just see someone that I would hate to have to try to run the ball to his side or deal with.
I just came across this article while we were talking, and I think I've got it figured out. It says that the Ravens staff were the ones doing the measurements at the combine. So that makes a lot of sense. They're trying to drive the stock down. I get it.
Yeah, they're basically saying this guy's not a top 13 player.
There you go.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna, we're gonna release this as a standalone, piece, and then I'm gonna, reveal the site, maybe Sunday night or Monday night, and do a launch. I'm looking forward to coming on to your show sometime this week. You just let me know, when, and we can get back to normal. You asking the questions and me answering.
There you go. You tell me when you have time. Just let me text me and we'll make it happen, man. I'm free all week. So.
Well, you're not free. You're just available because you've got a dedicated time to do this stuff, from 8 to 10 a.m., which is awesome. I mean, the fact that you're producing it daily, the consistency there, not just your fan base, but YouTube likes that. YouTube wants consistency. So, and it means you're doing it every day, whether you're feeling great or got other things going on. So can't thank you enough, for your time here tonight. But really for all of the evaluations that you sent, I think it was 22 or 23, and you've already told me you've got more coming. So super appreciative that you said yes and that you followed through on it. I'm, as grateful, for you providing that, as you said earlier, that you were for me asking in the first place.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm just thankful to be included. I really appreciate both your time tonight. So thank you so much.
Yeah, man, and we'll make sure we're in touch, the first week of May, so we can start talking about the 2027 draft.
You got it. All right, man.
All right, man. Appreciate your time. If you guys enjoyed this video and you stuck around this long, first of all, thank you very much. Second of all, as you peruse the site, if you come across anything that needs a correction or anything you disagree with, feel free to let us know, A, in the comment section, or B, by sending me an email. Appreciate you guys' time.